So what do you do when you don't know the information or when you don't have the resources that you need and you have a lot of fear, but you have to take a step? So in this episode, we are going to unpack that and we're going to figure out how you process through. I'm Rickey Jasper, and this is the Chasing a Greater Vision podcast. After getting laid off 2 times in 6 months, I realized I had to be chasing a greater vision in my life. I had to be walking into my calling. I spent time building up a successful fitness apparel business, and then now stepping back in front of camera to talk, to speak more, to hopefully inspire you to chase a greater vision in your life. And my goal with this podcast is for us to do it together. So let's make it happen. Welcome back to the Chasing a Greater Vision podcast. I am your host, Rickey Jasper. Today's episode, we're going to talk about how to take the next step when you have a lot of fear going on in your life and what you do surrounding that. So our first segment is our head and heart hits segment. This segment is what hit me in the head, what made me think logically, and what hit me in the heart, what made me feel a certain way. And this quote, I am so proud today that this quote actually comes from my dad's book, Walking in the Gray. So this book, my dad is Rickey Jasper as well. I'm Rickey Jasper II. He wrote a book a few years ago, and it's Walking in the Gray when the rules are not always black and white. The basis of the book is that when you're going through your day-to-day, not everything is black and white, but you still have to process through. So that is amazing for this topic because it's talking about fear. It's because it's talking about how to make steps when you just don't know. So a quote from this book, from my dad's book, Walking in the Gray. It's about moving forward with purpose without knowing the right step when the next step is critical. It's about deciding and making a choice with inadequate information. When we go through our day-to-day, we have to make decisions without having a whole lot of information. We have to do things without knowing what to do. What made me feel, it was like this weird kind of, all-consuming feeling that I was like, wow, like a lot of decisions that I make on a day-to-day or, big decisions, I feel like I have to make them without knowing what to do and with feeling like I don't have the amount of resources. And that's a very suffocating feeling because it's like you have to move forward when you just don't know, and you have to make decisions when it's like you don't have, and those are things that we go through on a day-to-day. So that is the head and heart moment today. And that's kind of what we're going to unpack because look, when we go through life and we think about things that are critical and what we stress about, it's typically because we don't know specific information. It's typically because we don't know what's on the other side or what the next step is going to entail. And it's typically because we feel like we might not have the financial resources. We might not have the know-how. We might not have, whatever it is that we need. But what we have to do, what's a constant, is we have to take a step. We have to make a decision. And that decision is critical for the next phase of our life. So that adds a lot of stress. It adds a lot of pressure. And then to kind of dig deeper into that, more often than not, these decisions and these responsibilities are not just on you, right? You might have family members, you might have coworkers, you might be in a relationship. A lot of your decisions end up impacting other people, which adds to the stress. When I was living in San Diego a few years ago, it was just me. I was single. I was chilling. I was doing my thing. Most of my decisions only impacted me. So the fear surrounding some of the decisions, I was like, well, hey, if it impacts me negatively, that's about it. Now it's a little bit different. I'm living with my significant other. We bought a house here in Texas. We have 2 pups. My parents live down the street. A lot of these different decisions that I make impact more people. I lead a team at my job. A lot of decisions that I make on a day-to-day impact more people. And do I always have the most information? No. Do I always feel like I know what to do? Absolutely not. But I have to make critical decisions. So that can be a lot of fear. So how can we take the next step when the fear creeps in, when we're scared, when we're unclear? And this is what we're going to really, really unpack with a few tips and tricks. So we have 4 tips and tricks today. This tips and tricks segment is to give you practical knowledge about how to step through an issue, a problem, or whatever. So today's tips and tricks, we're going to talk about how to step through fear. So the first one is realize that fear is indicating something. I think that this is the most important thing to realize. We think fear is a negative connotation at times, and it's not. Fear means that something's important to you. Fear is indicating something to you. And fear, it really heightens your senses. And when your senses are heightened, you have a choice to operate in your best self, in the best and most alert that you possibly can. And typically, you don't fear things that you don't care about. I'm never going to fear playing the piano in front of thousands and thousands of people. Why? Because I don't care to play the piano. Some people fear that because they actually have a skill and a gift to play the piano. And deep down, they really want to do that, but they're scared that they might fail. So your fear in certain areas is indicating that here's an area where you have to take a next and a critical step. Now, going back to the head and heart moment, where you might not know or have all the knowledge about that step, and you might not have all the resources you think you need to take that step, but the fear is indicating that this step is critical to your life. So understand that fear is a critical thing. And the other thing with that is procrastination isn't your friend, right? So when we're scared of things, we typically delay taking steps. If we think back, I'm 32 years old, dated in past years and so on and so forth. And I, assuming, a lot of you all watching have as well. Sometimes that you're in a comfortable relationship and it might not be anything wrong with the other person or whatever, but it's just comfortable. And you have a fear of, leaving the relationship, doing something different, making a different decision because that where you're at is comfortable. But the fear is indicating, okay, this is probably not where you want to be. And for both parties, it's better if you move on. And that's just the case. But as you're procrastinating, what you're doing is you're missing out on a few things. You're missing out on personal growth. You're missing out on potentially meeting somebody who is better for you. You're missing out on the potential to really change your habits when fear hits, to step into it because you're cowering back. So when you procrastinate, it really messes up a lot of opportunities. So whatever you're scared of, whatever the fear is indicating to you, just know that every day that you procrastinate, not attacking it, not going after it, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Number 2, identify and modify your success strategy whenever you are going to attack fear. So number 1, boom, the fear's indicated something. Great. Now you've made a decision. Okay, now I'm going to step into this and now I'm going to attack it. But before you attack the fear, what you do is you want to make a plan and you want to have that plan be like malleable. You want to be able to shift that plan, change it, whenever you can. Start small, right? I think of this every time I have a plan to do whatever. I really don't sit back and say, this has to be perfect right now. Everything has to be perfect now. But I do things that are starting small. If you guys have followed me from a podcast standpoint, a content standpoint and everything, you'll see the progression of my content, and it's wax and wane. It's gone up and down. But what I've tried to do is start small. And even if the equipment, the production quality and all that wasn't there, I was like, let me try to do something, because let me get myself in the habit of doing that, right? And what that did was that helped me. Now, once I got into the habit of doing that, I was like, okay, this doesn't really work. I need somebody to take care of the production. I need somebody to take care of some of the vision of the podcast, because now I'm adjusting my plan. What that does for me is that allows the fear to decrease some, because once I've made a plan, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see what some of the roadblocks are. And then once I start taking some action in it, I'm like, okay, let me adjust this plan and rewrite this plan. So you really, really focus on the plan. The other thing too is think about the fear and think about the plans that you're making as this is just a life test, right? You're not in a race. You don't have to go super fast through everything. You're not in competition with anybody. It's just a test. And these tests are meant to be taken. And I will say the one thing that I've noticed about my life is when I don't pass a test, it will come up in some other way, shape, or form in my life. So that's why you want to focus on really attacking fear head on, because it's a test. And once you pass it, you will grow and you will have another test to take. So number 3 is encourage yourself. These first 3 points, mind you, are in the book, Walking in the Gray, but encourage yourself. And for the longest time, I never thought that this was like a key point. The encourage yourself aspect has probably been the biggest game changer in my life over the past year. A lot of things that I've done that have caused me, before I did them, a lot of fear, right? Buying a house, restarting the podcast with a new producer and everything, just a lot of different things. And so what I would do is in other aspects of my life, I would be quote unquote encouraging myself, right? So for my workouts, I would make a plan. I would step through that plan. And if I felt off about it or whatever, I would kind of give myself some positive self-talk. But in important areas of my life that I felt that I really wanted to improve, I would always be giving myself negative self-talk. And I would just be like, oh, well, this is just me. This is just how I am. This is just my personality. This is just blah, blah. So you combat a lot of things in life for the better. If you want to lose weight, you get in the gym, you eat healthier. If you want a higher paying job, you might go get a certification to get that job. If you want a promotion in your job, you might work a little bit harder. You do things that you're combating anything quote unquote negative, something that you don't like in your life with something positive. But when it comes to the encouragement of yourself, typically we don't do that. We just kind of sit back and say, okay, well, this is how I am. This is how my thoughts are. This is how these things are. We don't combat what's between our ears. And that is a massively, massively important piece. Think about what you're thinking about and encourage yourself. So when the fear hits, think about your plan and encourage yourself and say to yourself, no, I know I can walk through this plan. I know I can work through these things. I know I have what it takes. And even if I don't know everything, I'm going to give the best with what I know. Even if I don't have everything and have every resource, I'm going to give the best with what I have. Because once you start doing that, you'll see what you know is going to increase because you're in it. What you have is going to increase because, you are all of a sudden going to amass resources out of nowhere, out of somewhere. It's just going to start to happen organically because you're pushing through. So make sure that you are encouraging yourself. And the last thing, and what is massively important is you got to jump. It's trial by fire. I love this aspect. I have a lot of areas in my life where I've just jumped. I started off my college career at Longwood University, and I was like, okay, I want to go to a different school. I went to James Madison University. The first week, I hated it. I drove back home after the second day of classes at JMU, and I was like, no, I want to go back to comfort. I don't want to do this at all. And I had a conversation with my dad. He was like, hey, if you wanted to go to this school, he was like, if you don't learn how to make jumps now and be in discomfort, like this is going to come up in a lot of different aspects of your life. So I was like, cool, let me jump. Then once I, got laid off from a few different jobs, I was like, okay, I'm going to move to San Diego and I'm going to figure it out there. Got into the IT world, got into online training, decided to jump into building an apparel business, decided to jump back into IT, decided to jump, in front of camera, and always a jump, decided to move, not back. I never lived here before, but moved to Texas to be closer to family, to buy a house. Everything was a jump and everything's a trial by fire for me. And it's great because I learn. And it's so much fear that comes with all of these jumps. But over time, the fear just indicates something to me. And it's not as scary as it was the first time. And over time, I'm looking at fear and I'm like, okay, fear's my friend because it's indicating something to me. And I know I have what it takes. And I'm creating a plan and I'm revising my plan and I'm encouraging myself. And then boom, now I just have to jump. And once I jump, I'm like, it's not that bad. And typically it's in an area that is meant to enhance my life. The last point in this is like, we shy away from things that are actually going to enhance our life. We self-sabotage on a consistent basis because we have a natural temperature and we want to keep it right here. And if we go too high, things get too good. We're like, it's too good. We want to bring it right back down. So we self-sabotage to bring it down to where we think that we should be, when in reality, shouldn't really be there. Or if things get too low, things are all bad, then we go to overdrive to get things back to equilibrium. That's just kind of like how our brains think and operate. That jump, if you consistently jump and you consistently say, oh, okay, things are good, but I'm going to find another area to jump in another area where I fear, in another area that I fear, you just kind of keep progressing. So you never really stay stagnant. So those are the tips and tricks to get past fear. The first thing, again, is understand that fear is indicating something to you. The second thing is identify and modify your success strategy so that's your plan. The third thing is encourage yourself. When those negative thoughts are going through your head, combat them like you combat everything else. And the fourth thing is make the jump. The last segment is our word of the day, word of the week. Whenever you watch this video, it is the word that we are going to live by, and this is move. Now, why is this move? Because in order to combat fear, you have to have some type of action. You have to move. You can't just sit and think about it. You can't always just be revising a plan. You can't always just be sitting and encouraging yourself. You have to ultimately move Jumping is a form of movement. When you move, things change. You change your state. You can't lay in bed. You can't want to work out and then lay in bed and say, oh, I'm scared to work out. Okay, that's a fear. Oh, well, now I'm making a plan to work out. Well, you're still laying in bed. Oh, I'm encouraging myself. I know I can work out while you're still laying in bed. You're still in bed. You haven't worked out. At some point in time, you're going to have to move. So whatever you're scared of, whatever you are unclear of making the next step in, and you just have a lot of fear, just know that ultimately you are going to have to move. And from an encouragement standpoint, you have what it takes. I truly believe that God has given you everything that you need to step in the right direction. And also there's a trust and the faith aspect there as well. Faith is believing in things that are unseen and being willing to take the step and know that there's going to be something there that's going to catch you, but you have to take the step. So you can do that today. Make sure that you are moving. So we know that fear is going to be present, but we are going to move. Also, to close it out, a big shout out to my dad, Rickey Jasper, for Walking in the Gray, for this book that has helped drive this message today as well. So let's move together. I know you can do it, and I am going to continue to do it with you. Thank you all so much for watching the Chasing a Greater Vision podcast. If you like this podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, send it to friends, use a carrier pigeon, do whatever you have to do. We hope that this inspires you to chase your greater vision in your life and for us to continually and consistently do it together.